And that was when I started letting people see who I really was and started acting that way in life and showing up that way. I felt a lot more free than I ever had in my life. I didn't need
Right.
drugs to cope with who I was and the shame I felt about the things I was doing or that I couldn't reveal who I was on the inside, and all that was stuffed down. I couldn't even articulate that, and when I was going through a lot of that stuff because I didn't really understand what was happening to me. It took a lot of reflection for me to understand that. But I'll always say that I found my freedom long before I got out of prison.
Yeah. Free on the inside. Yeah. Yeah. I did my last 19 years in prison sober, but uh, I ran into somebody after I got in trouble, and I got transferred to Soledad, and they told me, your problem was, man, that basically, I was sober, but I wasn't clean. I still had a shitty attitude, and I kind of woke up, getting in trouble at San Quentin, getting sent out to Soledad, kind of woke me up. That was the final straw in waking me up. But some things happened that led to you getting out of prison. So uh, did you go to board just one time, or how many times you go to board, or?
Yeah, so I went to parole board one time. In my initial hearing, they set a date for me. It was a pretty tough hearing. They really had grilled me and were trying to push me and push my buttons. And I
Right,
was in the room for, I don't know, it was about 3 hour long board. But one thing that I looked up and so at San Quentin, they produce a calendar every year. And last year I was there, I designed that calendar. And there was a calendar on the wall, and I didn't think they were going to let me go. They were really being rough and aggressive with me. And I looked up at one point during the hearing and I was taking a deep breath, trying to keep my composure because that's what they do. They push your buttons to see if you'll
right.
go off and talk really bad to you. And I looked up and I seen that calendar, and I was just something triggered in me is like, you're going to be all right no matter what. Like,
Mm,
even if you don't get a date, like, look at that on the wall. That's you. You did that. You
yeah,
you are who you are, and these people have your fate in their hands. And that was another thing. I went into that board hearing because I had a lot of help. USC, their school of law, helped represented me and made some political contacts, and they decided to represent me when I was inside, when I was doing a lot of advocacy for youth that get incarcerated.
right.
And so, you know, I felt like I had a lot of coaching. And one thing I went into that hearing, because you hear stories and everybody's going to give you advice on the yard. Like you said, you went umpteen number of times.
Yeah,
So everybody has something to tell you about how you should handle yourself in that room. And one thing I had decided when I went to that room, I wasn't going to see those board members as adversaries. I was going to see them as my friends, and those were the people that were going to let me out of prison.
right.
And I had to convince them that that's what they wanted to do. And I went in there and I just showed up and just told them the truth. That was a major thing, just
Yeah,
telling the truth about your life. And that was pretty much it because you've already been tried and convicted for the crime you're in there for.
right. Yeah,
So,
I had a guy named Randy Grounds who's a board member, and the day before I went in there, guys were like, God, I saw my attorney, but before I saw her, the guys are like, hey, that's the worst board member ever. And he worked his way up from like CEO up to warden, and then they put him on the board. And my attorney goes, oh no, he's just like you guys. He was like an ex-marine. He used to train Ultimate Fighter. He was. And I was like, man, I don't know. And I went in there for 2.5 hours about, and you know what? I was straight up with him, man. And he asked me questions, and he gave me plenty of time to answer. And I felt like he listened to me. And it's the first time I've ever had a board hearing where I was honest, and about myself and what I did and why I did it. And I went through the long-term offender program in CMC, and they didn't ask me one question about that program. I was all geared up, to give them all the answers for the program, and they didn't ask me one question about it. but they could tell that I got something from the program by the way I answered the questions that they asked me. And I was found suitable, man. And you know, he came out after the hearing and he had a talk with me. And man, I don't think I stopped crying for like a half hour, dude. I was so, you know, just uncontrollable, you know. But yeah. So you hit the nail on the head, you know, being honest with yourself about yourself. That was the key, you know. And I used to ask guys, you know, what do they ask you? What do they ask you? What's the answers? You know, and they go, hey, you just got to be straight up, you know. And it was true. So how long did you wait after you were found suitable before you were released?
So I waited about 20 days, I believe. I got found suitable in January 11th, 2017. I was released on May 11th, 2017.
All right.
So I had already done my time, the minimum amount of my time, and so I didn't have a long wait. Yeah, so you know, and they keep you on pins and needles. They got this period of time where the whole board gets to review your case, which can last up to 120 days, and then once they kick it to the governor's office because I was convicted of murder, he gets to review my case too. He has 30 days. It was under Brown, and
Mm-hmm.
Brown said, you know, that. Sorry, that's my alarm. I got to take my. That's my alarm. Take your insulin, dummy. I got to be reminded every day. But
Yeah.
so once Brown got my case, he decided to decline for review, and I
Right.
was going to be leaving in a day or two.
So you paroled to San Diego?
I paroled to San Diego. At the time, she was my fiance. We've since been married. We got
Right.
married a little year ago, but she grew up down here, so
So
I decided.
did you stay in transitional housing for a while?
Yeah, for about 6 months almost, I stayed in transitional housing. I
All right.
resorted.
Right. And did you get married during that time?
No, so we ended up moving in together after I got out of transitional housing, and we lived together for a little over a year before I got married, about a year and a half. And,
Excellent.
yeah,
Congrats.
thank you. We've been together almost 6 years now.
All right.
Been
So what are some of the things you've been doing, you know, with your release?
So when I got released, I have to say, like the first 3 weeks was really rough on me. I went to a transitional house that they were treating me like I was back in prison, which was rough. And I started advocating for myself, and nobody liked that. You know, I was just a young kid on the block kicking up dust again and yelling and kicking and screaming. And within 3 weeks, I was in the parole office, seeing my parole officer's boss getting threatened about going back to prison. And you know, that was really a wake up call for me, even though I realized like I wasn't doing anything wrong. I was just advocating for myself, trying to get the program to follow the rules. Um,
Yeah.
but I also realized like I didn't have a what they call a lot of social currency. Like nobody knew me. I was a new kid in the block down here. Like my parole officer, he didn't know me. The parole department didn't know me. And I was pushing really fast to live. I thought I was free. I got out of prison with it expectation like, oh, now you're free. And, you know,
Mhm.
I knew I was going to be on parole, of course, but I didn't expect that I couldn't leave a home that was behind a locked gate, that they were going to take my phone, that I couldn't have any money in my pocket, that they were
Mhm.
going to drug test me every week at least, if not more,
Yeah.
um, that they weren't going to let me go to work. All these plans I had made and told the board that I was going to do and accomplish, because that was part of that process. It kind of all got pushed aside. Like, yeah, that's not the reality of the situation, and that was hard for me to accept at first. And so after that talk, they moved me to a different program. It was a little bit more relaxed, and but I was honestly scared I was going back to prison. I didn't know. I had a lot of questions. Like, I know how to live inside a prison. I know how to survive in there. Like, this world's drastically different, and I
Yeah.
need to know my role. And then after that, you know, I started looking for a job, and I had got some skills while I was inside prison. I had 3 college degrees. I learned how to do sheet metal work. I had been a certified welder. I learned
Yeah.
how to computer code. I learned how to design on a computer. I was an artist, and every job I applied to, nothing was happening. And that was really frustrating for me because I was like, whoa, who's going to take care of me? You know, I have to get insurance. I'm a diabetic. I need insulin. It was a lot of
Yeah.
pressure. So I started reaching out to some of my contacts in the Bay Area and other places, and they eventually introduced me to my boss. And at that time, I had found a job working in a program that works with ex-offenders to teach them to be machinists. I was learning how to be a CNC machinist, but the pay was really bad, and I wasn't going to have any health insurance. And we just had a conversation. A couple of weeks later, she called me up and said, "Hey, do you want to come work for me?" And that's at a nonprofit, and you can work in juvenile justice and kind of learn what's going on in the county in juvenile justice and provide your like experience and input. And then one thing led to another. I took the job with her. I've been there almost 2.5 years now, and now I work hand in hand with probation. The chiefs of probation call me and ask me my advice on policy and what we
Wow.
should be doing to make a therapeutic system. Yeah, the first time I walked into juvenile hall, I started asking them all kinds of questions like, why do you do this? Why do you do that? You know, why are these kids locked in their cells right now? Blah, blah, blah. You know, and they'd never been faced with someone in my situation that came out with my understanding of the system. And you know what I've learned about our juvenile justice systems in California, there's 58 counties and there's 58 different systems,
Yeah.
and not every system talks to each other, and they don't know what other places are doing. I had a lot of institutional experience just from life experience, and then eventually I started going back to college. I go to San Diego State. I'm graduating in May with my bachelor's in criminal justice. So I've really worked on a lot of policy with different, we work hand in hand with Georgetown University, trying to reform the system in
Did you
San
go to
Diego County.
Washington D.C. at one time?
Yeah, I've been a little, I've traveled the country a little bit. I've been to New York, Washington, D.C. a bunch of times, out to Georgetown and see how Washington, D.C., they got a model juvenile justice system in D.C.
Yeah.
and taking San Diego County probation back there to see their system and see how they're doing things. I've taken them up to San Quentin to show them like how programs work and how you can have 3,000 volunteers come into your institution and change people's lives. Um, I've really got to know these people on a different level, and it's not seeing them as law enforcement and them seeing me as an ex-con. It's really like seeing each other as humans and seeing that we all want what's best for these youth, and
Yeah.
constantly reminding them that, you know, we're not our worst decision we ever made in life. These kids have a lot of potential. It's just being able to see that and believe in them and help change their lives. The juvenile justice system wasn't made to be punitive and keep kids incarcerated. It was made to transform their lives when things were going wrong, and had them out there committing crimes. Because we all know now through science that an adolescent's brain's not fully developed and they make rash decisions and they're
Right.
influenced by their peers tremendously. And so, you know, I back up a lot of that with research and data and show them exactly what's going on around the country. And
Right. Yeah. They say you're uh, part of your brain that understands the consequences of your actions doesn't develop to a certain until a certain age, and then but the other parts of your brain that develop like the your desires, like you want stuff, that develops earlier, and there's a bunch of different levels of development of brain that's gone into like a lot of these Senate bills that have helped guys get out of prison that committed their crimes as juveniles.
yeah, just like the Senate bills that allowed us to go to parole board and get a more meaningful chance and demonstrate our suitability for parole.
Right.
That was backed up by adolescent brain development science, and you
Mm-hmm.
know, it goes to inform a lot of policies that are made now in our juvenile justice world. And you know, the problem is a lot of these guys are 17, 18 years old. They look like they're grown men.
Right.
And bodies are fully developed. You know, they went through puberty. They start to get muscles. Maybe they got tattoos all over now,
Yeah.
so they look like grown men. And obviously, they know right from wrong. But the problem is their brain's not to develop their executive function, system function.
Right.
where they make decisions rashly and they make decisions based on their peer influences, just like we've been talking about tonight. You know,
Mhm.
I was influenced by the people around me hugely when I was younger. It wasn't until I was about 30 that I started realizing, like, hey, I have the ability to make decisions on my own, and like I need to start exercising some of my free will and think about why I'm making the decisions I'm making. About that, that really did not hit me till I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and
Right.
the ability.
Yeah, I can relate, man. I mean, I got busted when I was 17, and I got sent to prison right out of San Diego County, where you're living and working. So, I mean, if they would have had some type of understanding of the things that you're talking about now, I might not have had to go down to, 38-year prison term. But I did, and I'm here now, and hopefully our experiences can help people in the future. Like for any of these young guys out there watching that think like, you know, the big homie is where they want to end up being, and the prison system is glorified setup. I mean, what kind of message would you have for those youngsters now?
I would just uh, tell them, like, hey, prison isn't all what's cracked up to be, what you think it is. It's not juvenile hall. It's where men are at, and they make men decisions. Could hurt. You could end up hurt, or you're hurting someone else and doing things you don't want to have to do to people, and you have no free will. And it takes a lot of time to see that, but it's all a sham. It's all a sham, and it's not for anything. It's not for your neighborhood. It's not for your big homie. I mean, it's not going to make your life better. It's not going to make your family's life better. A lot of things that you believe in, that you believe is right now, are just antisocial, and is a way to cope with the traumas you got in your life, and the traumas you're experiencing from just growing up poor and in impoverished neighborhoods and not having opportunities. But there's more to life. There's way more to life, and
Right.
prison is not fun. It's a warehouse full of bodies, and nobody really cares about you, and even your family will stop caring about you after long enough, and you making a bunch of bad decisions.
Mhm.
And that's the reality of it. I watched guys around me, like, they didn't have anyone. They didn't have families. They didn't have homeboys. They just lived there, and they showed up every day. They got up and got out of their bed because someone told them to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hit the nail on the head, man. I mean, the bottom line is if you start going to prison at a young age, and you could find yourself being an old man and still in prison, and you could go on as a young man on a short sentence and end up doing something that will give you a sentence of all day, or possibly even death. I mean, I've seen guys go to prison and end up on death row. Off, you know, so
Definitely,
it's not a
definitely.
place to be.
I used to eat dinner with an old man named Curly every night, and he had, when I left prison, been in like 58 years. He was an old guy. He grew up with Merle Haggard. He played guitar with Merle Haggard on the yard at San Quentin. That's how old he was. And uh, I just watched him every day, and he got to the point where he was going to parole board, and he was 70 something years old, and basically the parole board was telling him, like, yeah, if we let you out of prison, where are you going to go? Who's going to take care of you?
Right.
And about that, and he
Was
didn't
he the
have.
guy that sold the medication?
No, Curly was just an old man, kept it quiet to himself, and he got there after you left, but he'd been there a bunch of times before, and he'd been
Yeah,
there since the 50s and 60s. So
yeah, yeah. So that's all he had was
and
prison,
that
right?
was it. He didn't have anybody outside of prison.
Yeah. I hate to see kids grow up and make that decision that leads them down that road. So, you know, I appreciate you coming on, Tommy, and telling us your story, and opening yourself up to the people that watch my channel. And I want to say congratulations on your marriage and your life, and I'm really proud of you, man, and the direction you're taking your life with your college and the work that you're doing for these kids, man. It's you're making a hell of a difference out here in the world, and it shows that you've done a total, the full circle, man. You've come all the way around to, you're a well-rounded, grounded man. I'm I'm glad I met you, you know, and I'm glad I get to see what you become, brother. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for having me on tonight. And I appreciate you thinking of me and wanting to do this interview. You know, what you're doing is just as important. You're giving people a glimpse of reality, and not the bullshit hype that you
Yeah,
know. A lot of people talk about what prison is and what prison isn't. And, you know, and it
yeah,
takes people like us to come out here and educate the world because you know, as much as you give me props for what I'm doing right now, you know, I believe we're all capable of this. If we all had opportunities, I'm not anyone special. I'm lucky I got some education behind me, but that's only because I got opportunities that people gave me and I took them. I feel like there's a lot more intelligent people than me in the world, and there's a lot of them stuck in prison. And I feel like we're all capable, and people shouldn't just see us as like ex-cons or people who done wrong in life. I think we've all made mistakes and made bad decisions in our life, and if we're defined by those, then you know you're going to discount a whole lot of possibilities to make your life better and the whole world's life better. You know, it's just people like me and you need more opportunities in the world, and that's really what I have to say. That's my message. If I could send anyone, is that I'm not special. None of us are special. You know, there's a lot of smart guys in prison and women, and
yeah,
uh, they did make mistakes, and they are paying the price for that. And you know, give them a chance when the
yeah.
time.
We let us out here and do what we do, you know,
Yeah,
and they'll be surprised
yeah.
for real. All right. Thank you, Tommy. Enjoy the rest of your evening, brother. Thank you for coming on.
You too. Good night.
And hey,